I want to take you back to your youth in Kansas City. How much was that a part of your youth?
It was a huge part of my youth. Such fond memories, of trying to make up, invent names of what the park was going to be, whether it was Condell Park or Conway Park. If I wanted to be Louis Tiant or Juan Marichal, and just the games all night long. I'd play against my brothers, and every now and then my dad would watch from the window and walk down the back porch and grab the bat and take us deep and kind of drop the microphone or drop the bat and walk back upstairs just to let us know who was boss. But it was a lot of fun.
So imagine that I'm a kid. I move into that neighborhood. What am I walking into? Who's playing? What time of the day are you guys starting? How long are you going? How competitive, how fierce does it get?
It got extremely fierce. A lot of times we'd split up the days, maybe play actual hardball in the park during the day, early in the day. But the fondest memory, Jack, that I have of my childhood is watching my dad put a ladder on the back of the house and walk up and put a floodlight on the back of the house so we could play night wiffle ball games at Conway Park or Condell Park. And I still remember, I can still see it in my mind of him, walking up that ladder and putting that floodlight up, and we were just lit up. Me and my brothers and me, we just couldn't believe it, and that we'd be able to stay up late and play night wiffle ball games, in our backyard.
That's pretty cool. Any grips from wiffle ball that carried over when you took a real hard ball and played baseball?
Yeah, without a doubt. I think it's a great way to learn how to make the ball move when you're younger, as opposed to trying to throw curveballs with a real baseball in your hand when you're too young. A lot of doctors and a lot of pitching coaches talk about injuring your arm if you try to snap off curveballs when you're too young. But with a wiffle ball, it's easy. So you can feel the movement off your fingertips. I think it was a big part of how I learned how to make a ball move.
I'm a wiffle ball junkie, so I love when you talk about your wiffle ball days. I kind of feel like Mariano Rivera in wiffle ball. I feel like I got a pretty good cutter. What was your signature pitch?
I think everybody wanted to learn how to make the ball curve. Obviously, because as a young kid, you're enamored with, when can I learn a curveball, Dad? Why don't you teach me how to throw a curveball? Teach me how to make the ball move. And no, you're too young. But here, try this thing right here and hold it on this side, and the ball's going to move the opposite way of where the holes are. And so then you could just naturally throw the ball and see the movement, and it made you feel like a big leaguer. It made you feel like, wow, I'm Louis Tiant today, and that's what it was all about. Who am I going to emulate today? Is it going to be Dennis Leonard, the great Royals pitcher back in the day, or is it one of the famous ones that I mentioned before?
One of the things about your career that amazes me is your high school didn't have a baseball team. Now, you played football, you played basketball, but you didn't have a high school baseball team. You had to get discovered via summer baseball and tryouts. Tell us what that was like.
It was interesting. My dad was my coach. My dad was probably the best pitching coach I ever had. He taught me the most important lesson, which is less is more. Don't go maximum effort every pitch. Back off and go for control. And so, he was a big influence, and we always played Little League baseball, and he was my coach. And then when I got into my teen years, high school years, I played in a summer league called the Van Johnson League in the Midwest, and that was a college league. So when I was 15 years old, I was playing against guys from the University of Missouri and University of Kansas, 21 and under. So just being, in that level of competition really helped me. And even though I didn't stand out, obviously I kind of flew under the radar because I was 15, 16, 17-year-old competing against older guys. But it really made me better. And my numbers weren't that great, but I was hanging in there, and it taught me a lot.
If baseball hadn't worked out, could you have played either college or beyond in football or basketball? You played quarterback in football, you were a point guard in basketball. Grade yourself. Do you think you had the skills to be maybe a D1 in either one of those two sports?
I wouldn't say D1, no, but I did get some offers at some NAIA schools and some Division II and Division III schools. There's a school in the Midwest called William Jewell, which wanted me to play all three sports in college, but it was a smaller school, and I could throw the ball, I could kick the ball. I was a pretty good punter in high school, and obviously I could shoot the ball a little bit, but I was too small and slow to play D1. The only chance I would have had D1 is maybe punting, because I was a pretty good punter in high school.
You also had a passion for journalism, and you've talked about how if baseball hadn't worked out, Oscar Madison was somebody that you looked up to. Where did that stem from?
To tell you the truth, I did watch The Odd Couple a lot, and I throw Oscar Madison out there, but he really was. I thought he was the coolest thing I've ever seen. He got to go to Shea Stadium every night. He got to live in an apartment in Manhattan, and his roommate was this nutty guy, Felix. And I thought, man, that's me. I want to have an apartment in the city. I want to cover baseball. I want to cover sports for a living. And I couldn't imagine, that would not be just a great life.
What kind of baseball writer would you have been? Pretty hard on guys? Pretty.
You know, I was a fan first and foremost, so, you know, I imagine I would have evolved. Once you meet guys, as you know, Jack, once you meet guys and you get to know them a little better and then you see different personalities, I'm sure I probably would have changed my approach a little bit as I went along and maybe gotten a little more opinionated. But initially, it would have been just out of love. It would have been just like, wow, this is great. I get to hang out at Major League ballparks and write about it.
It's interesting you say that. The second Major League game I ever covered, I still kind of had that excitement of being in a Major League clubhouse, and I got shut down by a player. And that player did me a favor because I asked a dumb question, and that player let me know it was a dumb question. And that was a little smack in the face that, hey, this is a job. You're not here to just watch the game. You've got to tell the story. You better go to the clubhouse with better questions.
Yeah, that's a great point. You know, and I learned that lesson early in my career with a couple of gaffes that I made. I mean, in the 1988 playoffs against the Dodgers, you know, Bob Clappish and I sort of got together and did an article, and I learned a hard lesson then about this is your job, this is the pros, and you know, you have to be accountable.
Yeah, that was the Jay Howell comments that you made, and kind of compared him to Randy Myers and how Myers threw hard and this guy's throwing curveballs, and the Dodgers let you have it after that happened. And that was really a tough time for you, right? Game 2 was rough.
It was incredibly rough, and I deserved it. I deserved the stuff that came my way, and the lesson I learned was don't run and hide. You stand up in front of your locker, take your medicine, and in the long run you get the benefit of the doubt from sports writers. And I learned that early in my career. It was probably the most valuable lesson I learned through a lot of pain, though. It was a pretty painful time to get blown out of the game. You know, I wasn't ready to pitch that game because I was so nervous about this newspaper column that I had done, and I realized it was out there, and this was before the internet, so it was over the wire, but it got from the East Coast to the West Coast pretty fast, and I think the Dodgers had 100 copies of that newspaper article plastered on their dugout wall that night when I went out to pitch, and it was the first time I'd ever felt really nervous. My legs were like heavy from nerves, so I clearly was affected. My performance was affected by something I had done off the field.
Can you imagine if 25 years later that was today? Like you said, it was pre-internet. That would have been online or tweeted somewhere maybe 10 minutes after you made that comment. There would have been a build-up to the day. Like you said, this was a little Pony Express-ish, yeah, but it did eventually get there, and it rattled you.
It did. I was clearly rattled, and I got blown out of the game. You know, the second inning, I think I got knocked out of the game. I gave up 5 runs early, and it really fired up the Dodgers and got them back in the series. And the Dodgers were a team in 1988 that the Mets, the team I was on, we dominated them the whole year that year, and that particular game kind of got them back in the series.
You came back, though, and pitched very well in Game 6. You guys don't end up winning that series. When you look back on your career, 194 wins, 5 World Series ring, Cy Young Award, anything you would have changed, anything you felt you left out there on the table that you didn't get done, or are you pretty content with what you did?
You know, generally speaking, the answer would be no, I'm pretty content, but there's always things you look back on. You know, I still think about pitches, you know, there are sequences that I threw. I still think about ball 4 to Doug Strange, you know, in the 95 playoffs, you know, against the Mariners. You know, it's funny how you remember your failures more than your successes a lot of times, but there's still little sequences I can carve out and say, boy, I really wish I would have done something different. But generally speaking, overall, I can't complain. I got a lot out of you know, a pretty average body here, 6 feet, 195 pounds, and I don't even know if scouts would even look at me nowadays. You know, everybody's 6'4", 6'5" on the mound nowadays.
I didn't mention when I went over your career accomplishments, perfect game. Can you go through a day? Now, I know there might be days where you're doing stuff with your family and you don't see a lot of people, but when you're out and about, say in the city, can you go through a day where somebody doesn't mention the perfect game to you?
It's mentioned quite a bit, you know, and the further removed I get from that day and that game, the more I appreciate it, because people who remember that game, it's their memory. You know, it's them telling me, you know, I was with my father on the Jersey Shore, or, you know what, we were crowded around a television in some bar, or just amazing stories about people remember where they were when they watched the 9th inning of that game. And to me, that brought it home. It really puts it into perspective about, it's not just about your performance. It's about the memories that Yankee fans have with their family. You know, father and a daughter, or a father and a son, or, you know, a mother in there, or a grandfather. Really, the generational connections, you know, for Yankee fans, really, for me, you know, taught me a lesson.
When you go back to that day, any treasured keepsake from that game, whether it's your hat, your uniform, your cleats, anything that you held on to that is very, very meaningful?
I wish I would have. You know, I mean, I sent the jersey to the Hall of Fame. They asked for it. Sure, take it. You know, I think I've got the spikes and the glove and the hat, but you know, I wasn't a guy that collected back then, and now I'm kicking myself. I wish I would have kept everything from that day, but I really didn't. The scorecard. You know, the thing I really like the most is the picture of Don Larson and me after the game in the bowels of Yankee Stadium, where it was just so spontaneous, where you know, I looked up and there was Don Larson, and he had this big smile, and I just ran up to him and gave him a hug like he was my father, you know, and it was just so natural and spontaneous. So whenever I see that picture, that brings back the memory for me.
Then you talk about saving or making sure you had your uniform. Don Larson, about 60 years later now, he auctioned off his uniform for tuition money for his grandkids. So he would be kicking you too. He'd be saying, "Coney, where's that uniform? You should have hung on to it."
And call the Hall of Fame and get it back, maybe. I don't know, but no, it's where it belongs. And you're right. I wish I would have kept more things. I've got a few things here and there, but not like I should have.
How about most helpful teammate you ever had?
You know, actually, you know, when I think about it, you know, you go back to your beginning stages, you know, I think about Dan Quisenberry, the late, great Dan Quisenberry. You know, you and I have talked about him before. He's just a remarkable man, a great closer, the submarine guy. He had a great sense of humor. One of the true characters in the game that died so young, you know, he had a brain tumor in his early 40s. So that was a heartbreaker, you know, because he was a good friend. He was my first mentor. He was a guy that didn't treat me like a rookie. He put his arm around me and said, "Hey kid, this is what you're supposed to do," instead of just whacking you around or you know just ignoring you. You know, a lot of times you get the silent treatment from veterans, and he was the first one that sat me down and explained things to me. This is how you're supposed to act. This is how you're supposed to dress. You can't wear that you can't wear that outfit, you know, in a major league clubhouse or on a charter flight. So little things that you take for granted that he did for me that I'll never forget.
How much did you pay that forward with younger players as your career evolved?
A lot. Yeah, I was a big believer in that, and there were times when I was playing on the Mets, where during the summertime, I live in the city, actually Queens when I first broke in, but I'd have an apartment in the city, and I would find a rental house for the summer, and any rookie that got called up, you're staying with me. You got a place to stay? You're not staying in that hotel. You're not staying in the Roosevelt Hotel. You're not going to stay at this hotel over in Queens. Come with me. Come to the house. And it was like a frat house a lot of times, and so you know that was my way of paying it forward.
Slightly non-baseball question. Now we're going to eliminate people from this, but I'm throwing you on a desert island. You can take 5 things with you. What are 5 things that David Cone has to have, can't live without?
Well, you know, you got to have something to listen to, something to read. You know, so how much time do I have to gather? But you know, the first 2 things I think about are music and literature, something to read, something to listen to, something to do. I take this thing right here, no doubt.
I was hoping you'd say that.
This thing right
prop
here
is coming up big.
I only need 3. I need something to read, something to listen to, and you know, a wiffle ball and bat.
I was expecting you to say to me, does the island have Wi-Fi? Because then that would cover a lot. You just bring your iPad, and that covers all the things we just talked about.
That would be nice, yeah.
Hey, I'm going to take you back to your youth even more. We're each going to open up a 2013 Topps pack, and then we're going to debate who got the best card.
Okay.
And if either one of us gets the guy in the cover, Mike Trout, we're in good shape. So
this is big. Right back to my youth too, right here, right?
Except no gum.
Okay, let's see who we got here. Ooh, I got a good lefty right off the top.
What do you got?
Patrick Corbin.
That's good. Wow, that is a good start.
Pretty good guy to start with.
I got Billy Butler. Speaking of Kansas City, good middle of the order hitter.
Very good, great hitter.
Oh, this might be game over, but I'm going to save it till the end so you can keep looking through your guys.
Okay.
All right, I got a Matt Cain, very, very solid pitcher.
Yes.
Coco Crisp, nice hitter.
Right.
Dominic Brown, he's having a nice season. Chris Iannetta, he's in town with the Yankees right now, but I'm holding out my ace. Are you ready for this? One of your former teammates. He's going to the Hall of Fame.
Oh.
He is on a farewell tour this year. Mariano Rivera.
That's going to be, you know, I was going to break out CeCe. I got CeCe. So.
Wow, this is a good matchup, but I think my ace trumps your king right here.
That's right, for now, because he's going directly to the Hall of Fame. Do not pass go. And they've already dusted off Monument Park for that guy. But before this guy's done, though,
he might get there.
He might get there too.
I agree.
He's going to have to step it up and finish the last part of his career on a strong note.
Even though I beat you in the baseball card challenge, your favorite Mo story before we hit the road, your favorite Mariano story.
Oh, God, there's so many. You know, Mariano was such a class act his whole career. I mean, that's the thing I talk about with Jeter and Mariano. When they came up, you didn't have to teach them anything. They didn't need that rookie talk that Dan Quisenberry gave me. They just seemed to know how to handle themselves with such class. Mariano, yeah, I think probably the best story is Game 6 of 1996 when he came in the game after 6 innings. You know, it was when Wetland was actually closing, and Mariano was at the end of an unbelievable year. And, you know, when he came in the 6th inning, watching him throw that fast, I think he probably threw as hard as he's ever thrown in his career in those 2 innings and just blew away the Braves. And when he came in when he came into the dugout after the 2nd inning, I went up to him and I kind of, you know, went to shake his hand, and he was, you could see he was kind of gone. Wow. So I kind of, you know, I kind of pushed him, you know. I said, hey, and he looked at me and I said, yes! Way to go, you know, and he was like, oh, yeah. He was still so wrapped up in the game, you know, as a lot of athletes are, but I'll never forget the look on his face when he finally said, oh, yeah, Wetland's coming in now, my job's over. And
that's a great story. He was cloud 9. He was right there, almost to cloud 9.
Yeah,
wow.
Amazing night that night was.
I want the cards because I won, but I'll let you keep the wiffle ball.
Nice, perfect.
David, thanks, man.
Anytime,
Appreciate
Jack.
it.
Sure.